What is up, guys? Zezuu here, and welcome to another scary Reddit Saturday. Yes, it is that time where we are breaking bread and listening to a few scary stories on Reddit. Now, this is a good one. I've paired a pretty good amount of scary stories for you guys, and this one is so scary that I have the lights on, because after reading these, I'm pretty spooked, and I think you'll feel the same way. So let's get on with the stories. Today's theme is simply scary, true stories. A female friend in college disappeared from a party at a university in the city town 25-ish miles north of our school. She had arrived with another friend who I believe had driven. At some point, she had split off to play cornhole or something and was later inexplicably gone. Phone calls went to voicemail, police were called, but she was simply missing. About 10 days later, she was found by a homeless man who witnessed her crawling up to a bus stop in the city begging for help. She had broken a leg and an arm and was in very bad shape. At the quite large party, she had her drink secretly drugged and was then led off by a group of men into their vehicles. She was taken to an apartment where she was drugged, repeatedly raped, and locked in a small room in between with a bucket to use as a bathroom. At one point, after being injected with heroin and raped, she somehow managed to convince one of the captives to allow her to use an actual bathroom to clean herself up. The bathroom had a small window to the outside, and with the shower running, she managed to squeeze out and fell from a third story into a large hedge or bush. From there, she crawled from the apartment complex to the road and bus stop, where the homeless man saw her and called police. Many cars stopped upon seeing her, making her captive unable to recapture her. 3 men were later arrested for the crime after surveillance cameras allowed police to relocate the apartment which she jumped from. She returned to our university 2 years later, graduated, and became a nurse. She was obviously traumatized, never partied again, carried a gun everywhere she could, and somehow moved on with her life. It was a terrifying tale none of us ever forgot. She was an 18-year-old freshman when the incident happened. You see, now that's scary, because 18 years old, I mean, you just got on campus too? No. I'm freaked out. I'm really freaked out right now. You'll understand the farther we get into this video. Ed Kemper murdered a college woman because his mother worked at a college, and he claims he wanted to destroy everything she loved. Then he murdered his mother and decapitated her, raped her head and her body, set her head on a shelf and screamed at it for hours. Then he murdered her best friend and turned himself in, relaying the whole story in detail, crying. Did you turn that light off in there? Yeah, leave it on. Yeah, leave it on. Yeah, leave it on. Yeah, leave that one on too. Yeah, might as well. Edit 111 days later. I'm still getting comments on this, and then so I'll add another thing that makes him creepy. He would bury the heads of the women he killed in his mother's backyard. He lived with her. He angled the head to where they pointed upward, facing his mother's bedroom window. He would later say he did this purposely because his mother always wanted to be looked up to. What scares me more is what real people can do. Like, maybe that's because I haven't been through enough paranormal stuff in my life, but what real people can do, that's what scares me more so. When my aunt was about 16, she was working at a grocery store and had a boss in his mid-20s. One day he called the house and was begging her to sneak out and hang out with him. She was considering it because it was her boss, and she didn't want to say no. My mom, who was 2 years younger than her, always gets these incredible spot-on gut feelings. She had one that night and begged my aunt not to go out with him. Thankfully, she listened to my mom and told him no, which made him really angry. He ended up going out that night and meeting another girl. He took her to some cliffs, raped her, and pushed her off. Somehow she lived through this and was able to get him sent to prison. I feel so sorry for that girl and so thankful for my mom and her gut feelings. Always trust your gut. I mean, she ain't wrong. Always trust your gut. 100% true as it happened to me. It's probably more spooky than scary. I'll let you be the judge. Many years ago, before there were cell phones, we had these things called pagers strapped to our hips. Someone would page you with their phone number and you would call them back when you got to a phone. As an on-call technician working in the audio-visual field, my pager would go off all the freaking time. Like most people who use pagers, our clients knew that if you followed up your number with a 911, that would indicate that the technician to stop what they were doing and call right away. Although I was always busy, I rarely if ever got 911s. One afternoon, traveling from Orlando to St. Petersburg via Interstate 4, my pager goes off with a number I didn't recognize, followed by the 911. I find the first exit and pull into a little truck stop looking place outside of Plant City to use the payphone. This takes maybe 3 minutes tops. I walk in, ask for some change, and head to the wall where there are 4 payphones to choose from. I pop my quarter in and dial the number displayed on my trusty pager. It rings and rings and rings and rings. I'm thinking to myself, what the F? Who would page me and with a 911 and not answer their phone? It's just about then that I notice another ringing sound in addition to the one in my ear. I pull the handset from my ear and 2 phones over on the wall, another payphone is ringing, but with an incoming call. I hang up my handset and the ringing stops on the other phone. I walk a few paces over, pick up the handset, and look at the phone number printed above the buttons. I look at the number on my pager, I look at the number on the phone. I look at the number on my pager again, I look at the phone again. Except for the 911, they are identical. I kind of lose my breath for a second, and then I make my way over to the girl at the counter and ask if she saw anyone use the payphone. She said I was the only person in the store in the last hour. The whole episode probably took 15 minutes, but man, I was freaked out. The hair on my back of my neck was standing straight up, and I just wanted to out of there. I get about 10 miles down the highway and come upon a scene that looked like a bomb went off. 4-car pile-up involving a tractor trailer hauling a load of steel that came loose. State troopers and paramedics just arriving. I pulled over to the side and helped the best I could, but it was all pretty much over once I began. I had no idea why I got that page, or from whom, or what, but I'm convinced that if I hadn't, I would not be alive to write this today. See, I'm majorly freaked out. I hope y'all just y'all understand. When I was a baby, my dad played on a softball team. Typical social team, out for beers and pizza after with the guys, family event type thing. My parents were good friends with 2 of the other couples. Both of them had young kids as well. On this occasion, the 2 other couples had left their kids at one of their houses with a babysitter they were splitting. They invited my parents back to the house to have some more beers that night, but I was being fussy and my mom nixed the idea. Though they would 100% have normally gone back to hang out. Well, it turned out my fussiness on that day saved our lives. When the other parents got back to the house, they walked in on a home invasion. 2 men had broken in, tied up the kids and the babysitter and her boyfriend, and were waiting for the parents. Took the parents hostage as well, made the dads drive with them to Banks, a grocery store where one dad was manager, and cleared out accounts in a safe. They then came back to the house, slaughtered both families, the babysitter and her boyfriend and kids included. They caught the two guys later on. My dad attended the trials and said it was the first time he had ever had thoughts of supporting the death penalty. It still gives me chills to know of how close we came to getting killed that day too. Edit. Wow, you guys are amazing detectives. I've been telling this story for years, and this is the first time I have been aware that it wasn't me as a baby. It was my sister, 9 years older, born in 72. My dad had been telling me this story wrong for as long as I can remember. Listen, man, this stuff is serious, and it's creepy, because what people can do, humans are some evil people. Humans are evil. Carol DeRanch was at a shopping mall in Salt Lake City in 1974 when she was approached by a man claiming to be a police officer. He said that someone had tried to break into her car and asked her to come with him. He then said he would drive her to the police station as she got in his car. However, this guy was not a police officer, and he did not drive her to the police station, but rather pulled into a parking lot. He then cuffed her, pulled out a gun, and threatened to kill her if she resisted. Only he messed up. He meant to cuff both of her wrists, but only managed to cuff one. She escaped and fought him off despite being hit over the head several times. Her kidnapper was Ted Bundy. He killed another woman just 4 hours later. Her escape also helped identify Bundy, and she was part of the reason he was eventually arrested. Years ago, when I was 8, my family lived in this big weird house kind of on the edge of a small town. The school district was in the middle of a big restructuring, so even though we were only a couple grades apart, my brother and I went to different schools and took different buses. This left me as the last person to leave in the morning and the first person to get home in the afternoon, which meant it was my job to make sure all the lights were off and the door was locked. One morning, I noticed the basement door was open and the light was on, so before I left, I turned off the light and closed the door. When I got home that afternoon, the light was on and the door was open again, and I just assumed that I had forgotten to actually take care of it when I noticed it in the morning, so I went over to turn off the light and close the door. When I got to the top of the basement stairs, I looked, and there was a big shadowy male figure towards the bottom of the staircase. I freaked out, slammed the door, and pushed a bunch of boxes against it, and then went and hid in my closet. For months I didn't tell my family because I was positive what I had seen was a ghost, and didn't think anyone would believe me. Then, about a year after the incident, my mom and her boyfriend realized that small amounts of money had been going missing for months, totaling $800 and $900, but never more than $60 at once. So we all walked around the house with flashlights trying to figure out how they could have gotten in. Turns out some creep was climbing in through a small hole in the outside of the house, shimmying through a crawl space, and then coming up into the house through the basement. Realizing I had been alone in the house with him on at least one occasion was one of the worst, most terrifying moments I had ever had. My wife called me while I was at work one day. She had a broken ankle and had just had surgery on a hernia. Her mobility was 5 out of 100. And of course someone tried to break in. Her saving grace was yelling through the door that she was on the phone with the cops. Really, with me. I'm on the way home and I passed this guy. To the exact description my wife gave me in the cops. I swerved his ass off his bike, hopped on the car, and sat my fat ass on top of him until the cops got to where I was. Guy had a gun, locked tools, and it could have been bad. Luckily, though, he ran, and with even more luck, we crossed paths. He could have went anywhere when he had left my yard, but he came straight towards where I was leaving. That was about 3 minutes away. I was around 11 years old, and I woke up in the middle of the night to a man straddled on top of me with his hand over my mouth and nose. He told me to roll over and not scream. I rolled onto the floor and tried to scream bloody murder. I say tried because when you are truly terrified, it can take a second to find your voice. My mom heard me screaming and came in and fought with the guy. He was at least 6 foot and she was 5'3", and scared him enough with the fighting and screaming that he took off out the window he came in through. Never did catch him. Man, Just these things, man. These things. People are scary. If some dude came in here, you think you be all macho, you start throwing punches, you be, but when you in the thick of that, you be like, you don't really know, you might freeze up. I mean, I would like to think that I'd be all dang Bruce Lee with it, but you don't know what's gonna happen. I was working the evening shift at a gas station. A man comes in all disoriented. I go to help him out. He had a gash on his head and doesn't know where he was. I couldn't see any crashes around, so I assumed he had fallen or something. Normally, we are supposed to stay inside the glass shielded register area whenever anyone is in the store. I, being a nice human being, went to help while calling the police. They got there and checked him out. They thought his head may have been fractured. Took him to the ER, and I went back to work. Cops stopped by for some coffee a few hours later. They told me the guy got hit by a baseball bat trying to break into a little girl's bedroom and was wanted for rape and murder in 2 other states. I never left the register area again at night. See, that little girl, I'm just going to assume that little girl, man, she came in there and was just like, I'm about to put them dang A-Rod, yo, but you try to break into my dang, you try to break into my dang house. In 3rd grade, a guy came to our school and held our class hostage. He had already killed his wife and was there to kill his kid. The administrators convinced him the kid was not there and to take one of their cars and leave. After threatening to kill us multiple times, tying up the gym teacher, dragging someone's grandma around with a knife at her neck, he finally left about 30 minutes later. The police caught him in Indiana on his way to kill his parents. He was convinced the world was ending and he was killing everyone he loved to spare them. The school did worse than nothing. They lied to the parents, and no assistance was given to either the kids or teachers involved. The gym teacher never came back, and every time she would see one of the kids at the store or whatever, she would have a breakdown. Several of us had PTSD, undiagnosed for decades, and we just thought that it was normal. In the 70s, Chicago public school system was more concerned about their jobs and lawsuits, so they covered it up. Now, that's just some bogus stuff right there. Before my dad died, he once told me a story from when he was in Vietnam in the 1960s. He told me about a mission where he and the other American 5 CIDG strikers, South Vietnamese villagers turned fighters, were tasked to place seismic ground sensors along a trail network deep in the jungle. He said they were about 2 days into the mission when he and the 2 of the strikers split off from the main group to go watch a nearby trail intersection. He said the jungle was pretty quiet that day, just the sounds of birds and bugs and an occasional monkey. He said they had been watching the trail for about 3 or 4 hours and were deciding on whether to move further down the trail or to turn back and link up with the rest of the patrol. Before leaving the cover of the bush, my dad said he checked the trail ahead of him one last time and prepared his men to move. Now here is where the story gets interesting, and he told me this part was absolutely dead serious. He said just as he started to step out of the trail, he sees a light-skinned black Union cavalry soldier in full battle gear laying alongside the trail just shy of the intersection. My dad said the Union soldier had 2 pistols, a Spencer rifle, and a short curved club at his hip. As my dad was trying to process what he was seeing, the soldier looked directly at him and smiled. Then the soldier slowly placed a finger up to his lips as if he was telling him to be silent, and then motioned my dad back up the trail. My dad said he was signaled for his men to remain hidden, and he recalled that as he slipped back into the jungle on one side, the Union soldier did the same on his side of the trail. Less than 10 seconds later, he said the lead element of a group of NVA, North Vietnamese Army soldiers, walked right through the intersection some 30 feet away. My dad estimated that the group was comprised of some 70-80 soldiers equipped with automatic rifles, light machine guns, and rocket-propelled grenade launchers. He has no doubt that his entire team would have been wiped out on the spot. He said as soon as the enemy soldiers had passed, he and his team beat feet out of there as fast and as quietly as they could and rejoined with the rest of the patrol. He reported the enemy soldiers his team had encountered, but decided not to say anything about the soldier he had seen. My dad kept the secret for many, many years, only telling me just before he passed, and earlier only telling his grandfather on her deathbed in the 1970s. He said when he told his grandfather, she smiled and without opening her eyes told him, "You saw Uncle Red Tom." Red Tom was my great-great-grandfather. He was a half-black, half-Creek free man who was a scout for the Union Army during the Civil War, and later served with the U.S. Cavalry in the American West. He was known for carrying 2 pistols, a Spencer rifle, and a Creek war club in the battle. This is crazy. That's crazy. But that is it for today's Scary Reddit Saturday. I'm freaked out, but it's okay. We got through it. And I'm gonna go. It's 4:17 a.m. and I'm gonna go to sleep. Have me a great time. So you guys, hope you guys are having a great night, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.